Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about polycystic ovary syndrome, but in a slightly different way because we're going to be looking at some comments left behind on a Twitter X or X Twitter or just X thread that someone left just a few days ago, and it has attracted a lot of conversation on the platform, and I thought it was a really good way to look at some of the ideas that we have behind this condition and use that as an opportunity to dispel some of the misconceptions about PCOS. Credit to @BabyWhale. This was a post that was shared on the 22nd of October, and you can see it had 1.5 million views at the time of filming this video, over 500 comments, so you can see it did generate a lot of interest. But they said, is there any study that can explain why our generation has so many women with PCOS? She goes on to say, PCOS is now a common condition in women all over the world, and I can't understand why it's that way. And she finishes up with, what's the reason? And I think that is a very valid question. So thank you @BabyWhale for starting us off on this discussion. Let us go into the comments, some of the comments, because there are quite a few. I promise we're not going to look at the entire 500, but there are quite a few. Some of them are very similar in terms of their themes, but I think that quite a number of them touch some key things which it will be interesting to look at and maybe clarify for what is going on. So the first response here is from this individual who says their diet consists of shitty and over-processed foods, burger, pizza, ice cream, deep fried chicken, the list goes on. Now if you actually look at this, you find that he got a lot of comments in response to this, a lot, some of them positive, some of them not so positive, but there was a lot of interest in that particular, which is interesting. There is one of the lifestyle interventions that we provide as practitioners for somebody who has PCOS is look at your diet, especially if the individual is overweight. We do say look at your diet. We do say cut down on saturated fats, processed foods, and do things that would help to cut down weight if that is applicable to that individual, because remember that not everybody with PCOS is overweight, but some women are. So in response to this comment that it is their diet, now to say that this is the reason why we are and why our generation has so many women with PCOS, you could argue that compared to maybe 20 years ago, for example, diet is a lot more processed, a lot more sugary, a lot more sugary foods, a lot more saturated fats. So that will of course impact our overall health, because what we eat does have an effect on our health, and we can talk about effects of inflammation. We're not going to go into that in detail, but it is relevant. So it is not the only reason, but I will agree that this has something to do with why we're seeing or hearing more about PCOS in this generation. The next comment here, I believe we're hearing of more cases now because more women are speaking out and there are more and better diagnostic approaches than before. I won't be wrong to say some women had it in the older generation, but they were either not diagnosed or the diagnosis was missed. I think this is a really good point that's been made by this particular commenter because they are referencing something that is key, the awareness about this condition, the fact that we're seeing or hearing of more cases because women are speaking out. So of course in the last decade or 2 decades there's been more progressive thinking, more confidence to share this and not just sort of endure and complain about certain things that are not right. And the other thing that they mentioned is the better diagnostic approach. I totally agree with that, because what was at play 30-40 years ago when it comes to diagnosing medical conditions is quite different. We've got better technology, we understand things a little bit better, so of course there's an improvement. So I think those two things, I will agree, also bear to why we're seeing it more in this generation. And here's another comment. I'm in a group of 600 women dealing with one symptom of PCOS or the other. I don't think there are more women in this generation. More women are just talking about it. So That's really interesting. And I think this is probably close to the truth, or closer to the truth, that it's not so much that it's more happening more. It's just that we're understanding it better. We're recognizing it better. People are talking about it more. So our consciousness is greater. And then I think she says something that really hit home. The aunties that grew hairs on their chin, women that couldn't give birth, people our parents told us about. So this one is interesting. It says, so many women have had PCOS from a very young age, but were never diagnosed. Misdiagnosis as well is also a leading cause to why it wasn't well known until now. I only knew I had it a few years after I got married, but I was suffering menstrual disorders from when I was 13 years old. This is very, very true. So remember that this is something that can happen right from the early teens, and we may not realize it. Now, what about the diagnosis? It tends to begin quite early on in a woman's productive life. So in the teens and early 20s, women are already displaying signs of PCOS. Now, there isn't a specific test that you take and says, oh yes, you've got PCOS. No, it's usually a combination of different things, starting with physical examination, hair or balding or excessive facial hair. So they may be close if a doctor examines a person and picks up certain signs that might indicate that this is PCOS. But we do go ahead to do things like blood tests to look at hormone levels. We would also do ultrasound scans of the pelvis to look at the appearance of the ovaries, and putting these together can lead to a diagnosis of PCOS. So that is how we make the diagnosis. Of course, making sure that other conditions which could present with similar appearances are ruled out, and that's why it could sometimes take a little while to get the diagnosis, and sometimes they may not be picked up early enough, because remember, in the teens or as a woman gets into the period, sometimes an irregular period is not unusual, as the body is trying to get into a regular pattern. So it can be a little bit complicated. Okay, here's another comment where someone says, call me crazy, but I think it's somehow linked to HPV. I think it was amusing that the response from the original poster was, you're crazy dear, there's no link here, please. There is no link between HPV specifically causing polycystic ovary syndrome at this point. Is it possible for somebody with PCOS to get infection with HPV? Yes, of course. Oh, by the way, HPV is a human papillomavirus, which we know is responsible for causing cervical cancer, and for which you attend your cervical smears and so on. So what I'm saying is that we don't have a definite link between HPV infection going on to cause PCOS. But the causes of PCOS, first of all, we don't know that for certain. We don't know what directly causes a woman to develop PCOS, but there is some understanding that it is associated with certain things. For example, abnormal sex hormone balance. So women with PCOS would have high testosterone. They could also have high estrogen levels. Their bodies are also not able to metabolize or use insulin effectively, which, if you remember what I've just said about the risk of type 2 diabetes, this is the reason, because they have something called insulin resistance, where their body cannot function properly with the insulin, and it increases their risk of developing type 2 diabetes. We also think there may be something to do with inheritance. We're not sure exactly how it happens, but there might be a genetic factor. So PCOS can run in families, and they may struggle with their periods, they may struggle with fertility, and people just think, oh, it's in their family, but actually it's a history of PCOS, or it may be that they also have type 2 diabetes running in that family. But there are things like endocrine disrupting chemicals, which I'm sure you would have heard about because it's been in the news so much. And this is referring to different types of food, plastics or plastic made material like bottles, toys, chemicals or products, cosmetic products, I should say, like shampoo and body wash and so on. Chemicals containing things like bisphenol A or BPAs, phthalates, pesticides, industrial chemicals. So there's a long list of things that are endocrine disruptors or endocrine disruptive chemicals, and these are things that interfere with our normal hormone activity, and because they interfere with the way the hormones work in our bodies, they can lead to abnormal cell development, abnormal cell division, inflammation, things that can cause very serious problems. And there's a whole range of conditions that can be associated with the EDCs, things like PCOS, cancer, fibroids, and so on. There is also the possibility of your lifestyle being associated with an increased risk of PCOS. And so for some women, it might be beneficial to look at their diet, particularly if the diet is not a very healthy type of diet, perhaps high in saturated fat, processed processed foods and so on, and a sedentary lifestyle, so not being very active, perhaps not having a regular exercise routine, and not just taking time to get your heart rate going by way of exercise. And this is an interesting one. Somebody says, I think it has a lot to do with the spiritual aspect as well. As I continue to heal my body from PCOS, I've noticed it has a lot to do with stored emotions and not being able to tap into our full divine feminine something due to certain generational and environmental trauma. Somebody responded to them and said, I was just about to say this. And as women are realizing that they're always in their masculine, be it work, be it emotionally, there's a lack of support and a safe space to truly be in their feminine, and that somehow it all connects down to PCOS, most observed in elder daughters. And the response is, yes, you broke it down even further. We have to feel safe and emotionally fulfilled to operate in our divine feminine energy. So there are a lot of things being said here about spiritual aspect and emotions and energies, and there are people who have beliefs about how disease happens, and I'm not going to deconstruct that. Presently, we still don't know exactly what causes it, so it's not everyone that has these spiritual issues, or as the commenter put it, may end up with PCOS, and it's not every elder or eldest daughter who has PCOS. So of course this argument is not very strong. It's a good one that I think it sort of puts things together. It's a complex answer, they say, but processed foods, chronic stress, light or circadian disruption, so that's different. Your sleep pattern basically is what that refers to. Lack of excess and I presume there's lack of exercise and excess sitting, so pretty much a sedentary lifestyle. Plastics, usually better to use glass or stainless containers. Non-stick pots used to be an issue in 2013, but the manufacturing is better now, which we've talked about that just a few moments ago. Now, this is one that says, I heard many women complaining about this after they took the COVID-19 vaccine. Now, I'm not saying it's because of the vaccine, but that's when I started hearing about it. Okay, interesting coincidence, isn't it? So there isn't any link between PCOS and COVID-19 vaccine. PCOS existed well before the COVID-19 pandemic, and so the vaccine's development. So this doesn't have any leg to stand on. PCOS is not just something that you do one blood test and you get the results. So there's a combination of different things. It may take a while to get the diagnosis, although not so long, thankfully, with what we have, with the kind of technology we have at the moment. And somebody says, so many women have always had it, but the truth is PCOS is difficult to diagnose. There's no specific test for PCOS. You do a series of tests, blood work and ultrasound, I believe. And if you meet some specific markers, then you'll be diagnosed. It's now being diagnosed better. So this lady or this poster says doctors then didn't know how to diagnose it properly. Even up to 2018, when I was diagnosed, one of the doctors kept on asking me if I had done wrong abortion to be in this much pain. It's also hereditary, and people are speaking up about it now compared with then. Yes, a lot has changed, and including the awareness of us health practitioners. I just wanted to bring this out because I did come across quite a few like this, what's PCOS? So you will have people in the WhatsApp group who don't know what we're talking about, and that's why I wanted to consider there's a lot of what is PCOS. Please, what is PCOS? What's PCOS? That's quite a number of people who don't know what PCOS is about. And somebody says increased awareness of PCOS in young females is needed. PCOS may occur at a younger age in girls who develop early puberty and feel like the increasing rate of PCOS is really alarming. Okay, so these are the comments from that very interesting thread. Somebody said that it's caused by birth control pills, and I really wanted to address that because that's not the case. It is not caused by birth control pills as far as we know at this point, but there is an association between using birth control pills and diagnosing PCOS, simply because when a young woman having menstrual irregularities in her early teens comes to the doctor, some of the things that we use are birth control pills to help to make the period regular. And when we start them on the pill, they start to have, regular bleeding because the pill causes an artificial period. And so while they're taking the pill, everything seems fine. They're on they are having periods. By the time they come off the pill later on in life and they intend to get pregnant, If it was somebody who always has had PCOS, they will experience fertility issues, or they may experience fertility issues, and they will say, oh no, this is happening to me because I was on the pill. And so they either blame the pill for the fertility issues or blame the pill for causing PCOS, which then led to their fertility issues. But the fact is that they always had PCOS and we're going to have those fertility issues, and it wasn't really because of the pill. But before we finish up, let us see if we can answer that question. Let's see what are our thoughts. We first made that association between abnormal periods and something to do with polycystic ovaries. Way back in around the 30s, there was a publication in the American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology. There were two physicians called Stein and Leventhal who put that association. Really from then, different groups, different organizations, different countries have had different ways to put the criteria together and make the diagnosis. So that has made it even more difficult. And don't forget what I said about the fact that you don't have a single test or scan that says, right, this is positive, therefore it's PCOS. You need to pull information together. And so sometimes that can lead to making it a little bit more difficult. But I think what's also responsible for us seeing more numbers of PCOS are the fact that we know a lot more about the condition. We're talking a lot more about it, both from the healthcare professional point of view as well as from the patient point of view. So less stigma. Social media, of course, look at the wonderful job that this lady at Baby Will has done simply by asking that question. Look at the number of questions and comments and things that people are just tossing into the room, discussing this thing. So hopefully that helps to drive awareness. But I'm really concerned that we should be driving awareness positively so that we're spreading the right information. And that's why I want to tackle some of those things that people are saying about pill, or if people are saying, oh, it's only because she eats sugary food or processed food. Because yes, that has a role, but that's not the only reason. So we don't want to sort of go down the route of just blaming somebody alone for diet. Yes, it is good to have a healthy diet. Yes, it is good to exercise regularly, totally, but that's not the only reason. And of course, this also brings us to endocrine disrupting chemicals and how those could impact our lifestyle. And let me share something I think is quite interesting: how to reduce your exposure to endocrine disruptors. Impossible to completely eliminate your exposure. You can reduce your exposure. And so some of the things that are suggested are: replace your plastic water bottles and containers with glass or stainless steel ones, store food in glass containers, get rid of old or scratched plastic containers, don't heat food in plastic containers in the microwave, use tin foil instead of plastic wrap, and so many other suggestions for how to reduce our exposure to endocrine disruptors. I just wanted to run through that. I know it's a bit of a long one, but I hope you watch it and I hope it helps somebody to understand PCOS, put its diagnosis, come quickly to their practitioner with any symptoms, and just sort of insist that this is not right. And I hope this encourages people to do so. So thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a like. Any questions that you want in terms of clarification of this condition, please send to our email health information service. I will put the link for you in the description box. Comments down below. If you'd like me to do this kind of a thing again and look at a condition that sort of sparked interest on Twitter or X, please let me know. And yeah, I'll see you again soon. Bye guys.